Jimmy Carter revived the tradition of walking at the head of the inaugural parade. The only other president to have done this before him was Thomas Jefferson. Both presidents wanted Americans to see them as the people's president and felt this open-air walk would reflect that image. It has since become a tradition for every president since to walk in the inaugural parade. Did you know that President Washington added the words, "So help me God," to the end of the oath of office? Every president since has continued saying this, even though it's not required.
So help me God.
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 Did you know Thomas Jefferson was the first president to hold an open house after his inauguration? It wasn't an official event. However, everyone just followed him home. As a result, Jefferson opened up the White House for public tours. Did you know only 3 presidents didn't use the Bible while taking the oath of office at their inauguration? John Quincy Adams used a volume of law. Theodore Roosevelt didn't use a Bible or a book at his first inauguration. After JFK's assassination, Lyndon Johnson used Kennedy's Roman Catholic missal to be sworn in as president aboard Air Force One. Aside from these 3, every president has used the Bible, a tradition started by George Washington at the very first inauguration. Did you know only 2 presidents didn't have a Supreme Court justice administer the oath of office at their inauguration? Calvin Coolidge had his father administer the oath. Lyndon Johnson used a U.S. district judge in Texas and was sworn in aboard Air Force One immediately following the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Did you know the first inaugural parade occurred at James Madison's ceremony in 1809? This tradition was inspired by previous presidents because crowds of admirers would simply follow them home after the inauguration. Did you know the first official inaugural ball was held for President James Madison and his wife Dolly? However, George Washington gets some credit for starting this tradition. After his inauguration, he danced the minuet. Today, presidents attend multiple official inaugural balls. Did you know the inauguration ceremony used to be different? President George Washington kissed the Bible after taking the oath, but this tradition faded over time. The only president to substitute this for another action was President Dwight D. Eisenhower, who delivered an improvised prayer. Did you know President Lyndon Johnson's inauguration was a complete disaster? His podium caught on fire that day, and this came after he blundered the oath, saying without any mental reservation whatsoever, rather than without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. Did you know President Andrew Jackson's inauguration celebration got so out of hand he had to escape by breaking a window and climbing out? There were fights, broken furniture, bloody noses, smashed crystal, and fainting women among a rowdy crowd of 20,000 people. Did you know that the inauguration wasn't always held in Washington, D.C.? The first one was held in New York City and Lower Manhattan at Federal Hall on Wall Street. The second one was held in Philadelphia at the Chamber of Congress Hall. Did you know the inauguration was originally set for March 4th? The date was changed to January 20th after 2 national crises occurred. The first one came after Abraham Lincoln won the 1860 election. Southerners were angered by his promise to stop the expansion of slavery and saw it as a threat to their way of life. 7 states in the Deep South decided to leave the Union. The outgoing president, James Buchanan, was powerless to stop it. This 4-month waiting period allowed the South time to organize and prepare for the Civil War. The second event happened after Franklin D. Roosevelt won the 1932 election. The Great Depression had shattered the U.S. economy for 3 years. Bank failures and a massive stock market crash had left many Americans jobless or homeless. Roosevelt's campaign blamed the fallout on President Herbert Hoover and promised the American people a New Deal. The country had to wait 4 months for Roosevelt to take office. To make sure this never happened again, Congress spent that time ratifying the 20th Amendment, which moved up the inauguration date. Did you know President William Henry Harrison gave the longest inaugural address in U.S. history? It was nearly 8,500 words long and took nearly 2 hours to deliver. On the flip side, President George Washington delivered the shortest inaugural address. It was just 135 words long. Did you know the shortest presidency was William Henry Harrison? He died just 31 days after his inauguration. After delivering his nearly 2-hour address outside, he caught a cold, which turned into pneumonia and killed him. Do you think Trump is the only president to pull wild stunts? Dwight D. Eisenhower had a cowboy and trick roper named Monty Montana lasso him during the inaugural parade. Have you heard about the drunk inauguration? Vice President Andrew Johnson had a bout of typhoid fever and used whiskey medicinally to relieve the symptoms. When it was time to take his oath of office, he was drunk, slurring his words and rambling. Lincoln had to assure the crowd that Johnson wasn't a drunkard. Just a month later, Lincoln would be assassinated and Johnson would be sworn in as president. Did you know the title of president was debated by our founding fathers? As Washington was making his way to his inauguration, Congress wrestled with what his official title should be. Vice President John Adams made a few suggestions, including His Elective Majesty, His Mightiness, His Highness, and even the President of the United States of America and the Protector of their liberties. However, the Congressional Committee settled on something much simpler, and it's the term we still use today, President of the United States. Did you know the first presidential election was unanimous? Everyone selected George Washington. However, he wasn't too excited about it. He was ready to retire with his wife Martha at Mount Vernon. When he departed for his inauguration, he wrote in his journal he was leaving, quote, with a mind oppressed with more anxious and painful sensations than I have the words to express. He went on to say he had, quote, best dispositions to render service to my country in obedience to this call, but with less hope of answering its expectations. How did we get the term lame duck session? It refers to that 2-month gap between Election Day and inauguration. The outgoing president lacks political support and time to accomplish anything, while the incoming president has no official authority. The term lame duck stems from a hunting term when game bird is injured by a shot. Now that you know where we've been, find out where we're going. Tune in to Ladies Love Politics, where you can stay informed without going insane.